Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. I'm excited to be here another evening with you for Self-Care Sunday. Let me just get our Facebook going. Welcome as you come in. All right, so we are set to go and set to be live on YouTube and on Facebook. Okay, here we go. All right, so tonight we are, let me turn that volume down. All right, so tonight we are in week 3 of our Self-Care Sunday, and we've had an amazing 3 weeks going through and learning how to set boundaries. And please go back and watch the other videos. They're on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is Clear Thinking with Sharon Brumfield. So go ahead and subscribe to that YouTube channel. If you're on Facebook and you have not, and you're just scrolling through and you see this video and you have not liked our page, go ahead and like our page, Clear Thinking Counseling Services, so that you can stay up to date on what's going on with us. We're in our final week of the Boundary series. I know I've learned a lot. I pray that you all have learned a lot as well. And so we're going to jump right in this evening, and we're talking about 6 areas that we will go through when we're setting boundaries. And I pulled some scripture to go along with those areas tonight, just so that we can see what the word says about setting boundaries. Before we get into that, I want to share about our upcoming event. February is the month of love. We know that. We know that we share love in our families and we share love as couples. And so this is an opportunity for us to share love with ourselves, to share it with ourselves. And it's okay for us to love on ourselves. Even if we're in a relationship, it's still okay and needed for us to love on ourselves. And so our self-love event is February 4th through February 4th and the 5th. It's a Friday evening and a Saturday afternoon. A registration is $50. And I do understand that some are going through financial challenges at this time. And so I understand that. I remember we used to go on to women's conferences, and I needed some assistance during those times, and there were people there to help me. So we're offering scholarships. If you are in need of a scholarship, we have some full scholarships for the full $50, and we have some half scholarships where you would only pay 50%, so that would be $25. All you have to do is email clearthinkingcs@gmail.com, let us know, and then we'll contact you regarding the availability of scholarships. Now, those are on a first come, first served basis. So if you're thinking about going and you know you have that time available where you can come out and be a part of this weekend event, go ahead and email us so that we can get you set and ready for the registration. We're going to have a great time. We have some awesome people that will come and do some small group work. We have a panel discussion that will take place. We have 2 master classes that will go on. So you don't want to miss this opportunity. All right. So I'm going to start with this quote I found in Psychology Today. It says, "The whole point of having boundaries is so that we can contain ourselves within the parameters where I stop and others begin." So it's an opportunity for us to, like I said, in several of the classes, the times we're together, you draw the line in the sand. It's not to push people away, definitely no, but it is so that we can know where am I at? Where do I end and other people begin? It's hard when we allow people to overstep that boundary, and now we become them, or we allow them to decide who we are, how we act, what we say, what we do. We do all that based on who they are, and then we forget ourselves. So this quote was really key and important when I was reading. I was like, yeah, it is. It helps us to define who I am And then it helps you understand who I am and things I will allow, things that I like, things that I don't like. And so that was an important quote that I saw that will bring us right into where we are today. And so our first point that we're going to talk about today when it comes to setting boundaries is clearly understand and communicate your boundaries. You have to understand your boundaries first before you can, I'm going to say, instead of saying enforce, I'm going to say communicate them with others. All right. We have to know where we draw the line in the sand with certain areas of our lives, what will allow people to say, what will allow people to do, those type of things. We have to clearly understand them first, and then we have to clearly communicate them to others. Proverbs 17:22 says, a joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. Let me read that again. A joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. When we're not clear about our boundaries, we'll allow other people to steal our joy. Actually, we give it away. You know, when we don't have those clear boundaries, our spirits can be crushed. And that's not a place that we want to be. And it's definitely not a place where God would want us to be. And so clearly understand and communicate your boundaries with other people. When we get clear about our boundaries that must be kept in order for us to feel comfortable and in order for us to feel safe. It's a twofold thing. I have to be comfortable with what you're saying to me, how you're acting towards me, and it gives me an opportunity to feel safe with you. If I know that you're going to adhere to the boundaries that I set up in my life, then I feel safe with you. Then I trust you. I feel comfortable being me. I feel comfortable operating. I feel comfortable letting you know, oh, I don't like that. Or can you phrase that a different way? Or no, I don't want to go to that restaurant. How about we try this one? And then we can communicate back and forth. However, if I don't clearly understand my boundaries and what I need for myself to feel comfortable and safe, how can I communicate it to someone else? Okay. All right. Number two, we got to count the cost of these boundaries. You got to count the cost. Proverbs, let me see. We'll come back to that one. I think I double typed that. We'll come back to count the cost because that's very important. And when we're counting the cost, we're looking at, if I set this boundary, what's going to happen as a result of that? Or why do I even need to set this boundary? Because I need A, B, and C. Okay. So when we count the cost, we're looking at what is going to cost me and what I'm going to get back, what is going to cost somebody else when we set these boundaries. Number three, what are the consequences? What are the consequences for us setting boundaries? Proverbs 19:19 says, a man of great wrath will pay the penalty, for if you deliver him, you will only have to do it again. Okay. That one, when I read that scripture, I was like, wow, that is so true. If I'm dealing with somebody and they're not hearing me about my boundaries, but I continue to allow them to come into my space and I continue to allow them to overstep that line, all it's saying is I'm gonna have to keep saying this. It's gonna keep happening over and over and over again. If I allow you to move in a way that's not in agreement and alignment with what I want, then that's going to be a continued process. It's going to happen, and then not only is it going to continue to happen, it's going to get bigger and bigger. They'll make bigger steps. They'll take bigger pieces of you. So you've got to be clear that there has to be consequences to someone overstepping your boundaries. There has to be something done so that they understand, okay, that's something they don't like. So for instance, you're at work and a coworker keeps coming into your workspace and talking and getting you off track for what you need to do. If you allow that to happen every single day, now you're getting frustrated, right? Because you have work that you need to get done that's not getting done. However, you won't say what you need to say because you think it's going to hurt their feelings. It's just going to snowball. Now they think that that's okay, but if you have a boundary and say, during this time and this time, I really need to get work done, but you can come to my office after 2 o'clock, you know, on a break time, and then we can chat then. That's a boundary. It's a simple boundary. And the next day, if the coworker comes in before the 2 o'clock that you said they could come in, and then all you have to say is, oh, I have a lot of work to do. Remember, we can talk after whatever time we said. All right. So that gives us an opportunity to set the boundary. It gives us an opportunity to make it clear. We communicate it. All right. And then we enforce it. All right. And then there's a consequence for that. So then maybe next time, if we're in an office space that has a door, my door is closed and locked so that the person can't just walk in. It has to be a consequence. There has to be something that happens so that the person doesn't keep stepping over the boundary. All right. So we looked at number one, clearly understanding and communicating our boundaries. We looked at counting the cost, and then I'll have to come back and put the scripture in there because I don't have it here. And number three, we looked at consequences, and we looked at setting up the boundary. And then when it's overstepped, we communicate that was overstepped, and there's a consequence for that. Right? All right, we're looking at number 4, consistency. We got to be consistent with stuff. We can't have a boundary one day and then the next day we don't have a boundary. We learn that when we have children and we have toddlers. You have to be consistent with those boundaries with toddlers, because they will run and they will run over whatever you're talking about. If one day bedtime is 8 p.m. and then the next day is midnight, and then the next day is this, having a consistent plan for them to go to bed is important, because it lets them know, okay, this is what time I need to go to bed. This is what time, even though they may fight and they may fuss, they may get up 25 times. Yes, but we still put them right back in the bed so that they understand that's the consequence of overstepping this boundary. It's same with other people. It's same in marriages and friendships, workspaces, church ministries. It's all the same thing. When we are consistent with those boundaries, then everyone will understand what the boundaries are. So for some places on the workplace, you got to have your mask on. When you don't have your mask on, what? Someone's going to tell you to put your mask on. For some places, it's you can't clock out before this many times before your time, you're off your shift. If you do that, what? They're going to come and they're going to talk to you. You keep doing it, you might get written up. After that, you might get a day, suspended a day. There are consequences to boundaries. There's boundaries everywhere we go. However, when it comes to our personal lives, sometimes we are lacking those. And we learned that the first week, I believe, with that chart that had the different levels of boundaries. And when your boundaries are too lax, then people run over you and they tell you how to act. But when you have those healthy boundaries, then you can have mutual relationships with people. Is give and take. Or you can have some boundaries that's so rigid that you don't let people in at all. And then that's when you are not you're not having relationships on your job. Maybe your relationship in your marriage or with your children is at risk, or in your family with your parents or things like that. We've got to have that middle ground, those healthy boundaries that allow us to communicate with other people. They allow people to communicate with us, and then we can have healthy relationships. When we have boundaries, we can bring the best of us to a space. Okay. We can be our real self when we have boundaries. We can come to a relationship whole. We can come to a relationship not having to be dependent on someone else to keep our emotions at an even keel, you know. So having that consistency is important. And then I have Titus 3:10. It says, as for a person who stirs up division, after warning him once and then twice, having nothing more to do with him. So once we've gone through this, once I've told you once, I've told you twice, now I have to reevaluate. I have to evaluate, is this a relationship that I need to be in? Because they continually overstep my boundaries. They continually try to walk over these areas that I have placed in my life. And then we can look and see, is that someone that's going to be toxic? Is that someone that has my best interest at heart? Is that somebody who really, really wants to be in a relationship with me? Or is it someone that wants to hurt me? So we have to really look at those areas of our lives. I know it's a lot of relationships are work. It's work. We can't just jump into a relationship and think it's just going to go smooth. No. I was telling someone that, you know, when we get married, those are things we need to do. We need to set the boundaries. We must have those type of conversations with the person that we're looking to come into this relationship with into this marriage with, so that we know how to flow with each other. Oftentimes we don't do that. And then we get into the marriage, and after years, we look in and it's like, oh, now we need to work through these things. And sometimes it works. And then, of course, sometimes it doesn't. However, if we look at those things in the beginning, and that's why marriage counseling is important, or mentoring when you first think about getting married, so that you can talk through some of those things with a third party, with another person there, so that it's fair and everyone gets to talk and everyone gets to explain. And then, you know, okay, this is a relationship we can work with. This is something we can move forward with. And then maybe we're too far apart that it's not possible for us to come on the same page. You know, boundaries. It's nothing like being in a marriage and one person, you never talked about kids, and then one person wants to have a kid and then the other person doesn't. That's challenging. You know, that's hard. So having those conversations up front will let us know how we can move forward in the marriage or the relationship. All right, we're on number 5. This is rolling along. Number 5, constraints. Constraints. Proverbs 22:24 says, make no friendship with a man given to anger, nor go with a wrathful man. Constraints, having those things up. Okay, I'm not going to deal with this. That's not something I'm going to deal with. Already knowing up front. And I know it may sound repetitive. However, when you think about it, it is. We go through these things all day long with boundaries. Why do we get frustrated with people? Because they've overstepped our boundaries. And maybe it's a boundary that we've never even talked about. You know, why do relationships break up sometimes? Because a lack of boundaries. We got upset about something that a person does over and over and over again. However, we never communicated that was a boundary for us, that was something serious for us. And so when I think about this scripture right here, make no friendship with that type of person. So have these boundaries, and then later on, you can look back at it and say, oh, I can loosen up that boundary. But if I go right in and have relationships with people that have all of these areas in their lives that are not in alignment with me, then it's a challenge. But if I already have these boundaries up, and then later on, when we're in relationship, I can say, oh, okay, I can let my guard down a little bit. All right. But if we don't have them already set up, and we're not already looking at a person to see if we're compatible, if we're just jumping into relationships, even friendships, are challenging sometimes. If you're in a friendship with someone who's very draining, they're coming to you constantly with their baggage, with their stuff, but they're not asking you how you're doing. They're just dumping on you. Yeah, that's hard. And so you already have to, look at a person and be, check them out a little bit, check them out, see how they respond, see how they talk to you after a little bit. And then we can say, oh, maybe this is somebody that I can be friends with. But if we just jump into friendships and then down the road, we're already in this friendship and we're already connected, and now it's draining us and it's causing us to just, have the loss of energy and not even want to talk to them when they're calling, then that's a lack of boundaries. All right. So we had several areas of boundaries. Just to clarify, we talked about clearly understanding and communicating your boundaries. We talked about counting the cost of boundaries. We talked about consequences, and just thinking about that, counting the cost of the boundary, it reminds me of when I was talking about the constraints and boundaries, counting the cost. And so am I going to look at this relationship and say, this is one that I want to get into because we're aligned? Or am I just going to jump into relationships not knowing anything about the person, and now I'm connected, and then it's hard for me to get out of the relationships? So counting the cost and then talking about the constraints in relationships that kind of coincide for me. Again, we talked about consequences. We talked about consistency, having that consistency, not letting it slide because we're tired, not letting it slide because, I just don't want to deal with that today. No, being consistent. This is what I'm doing. This is my boundary. I don't like that, and I need you to stop. Being able to have the confidence to do that. And I think that was our last one. It is, and it's confidence. Having that confidence. Once you already know those other areas, you already have communicated it, you understand it, and it's clear with you what the boundary is. Once you know the count, you count the costs. Once you do all of those areas, you're consistent. You're going to be consistent in it. All of that, you've got to have confidence. You got to have confidence to know, this is what I want. This is how I need you to talk to me. This is how I need you to flow with me. Okay. And be confident enough to tell people that. And that we're going to look at Galatians 5:13. It says, for you were called to freedom, brothers. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love, serve one another. Freedom brings confidence. When we're free from what people are going to think, if we're free from thinking we're going to be rejected, which we talked about in week 2, if we're free from the fear of the unknown, what's going to happen if I set this boundary? What's going to happen if I'm consistent in this boundary? What's going to happen when I communicate this boundary? Whatever that is, we have to continue to have that confidence and be free to operate and do things that make us feel safe and make us feel comfortable. And it's not a haughty, it's not like you're haughty. It's not like you're being mean and you're trying to push people away and you're being angry. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about clear boundaries that help you stay safe and help you feel comfortable being in a relationship. If you have no boundaries, then people will tell you how you need to act. But when you have boundaries, you tell people how to treat you. All right. When we have boundaries, we teach people how to treat us. And like I said, it's not being mean. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to love yourself enough to set boundaries. And it's okay to reinforce those boundaries. It's okay to be consistent in those boundaries. It's okay to be confident in those boundaries so that we can move forward in our lives. And it causes It helps us in areas where people would try to hurt us, hurt our feelings. It helps us in areas where we don't take offense because we've already set the boundary. You know, we're not going to allow people to continue to hurt us and continue to downgrade us or continue to walk over us because we have those boundaries in place. All right. And so this is our final installment of this series on boundaries. We have several other areas that we want to tap into. I know I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot over these 3 weeks talking with you all about boundaries. I know I heard someone today say that they learned a lot, that it was good information for them. And for some, it may be a refresher that you already knew about boundaries. You already knew how to set boundaries, and you were already setting boundaries in your life. And that's wonderful. But for those who are scrolling through Facebook and you come along and see this video, go ahead and watch it. This is the only one that's on Facebook because I thought I would pop into Facebook today for this final part of this series, but make sure that you go over to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Clear Thinking with Sharon Brumfield, so that you can see week 1 and you can see week 2, and then you'll get the alerts when we come on. We're on every Sunday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, and so you can watch our broadcast. We may come back on Facebook and do it as well, but for the most part, we're on YouTube with this Sunday self-care time. All right. Again, remember our upcoming event in February. It's the Self-Love for Me weekend. During this weekend, which is February 4th and February 5th, it's a Friday evening and a Saturday afternoon. We'll come in. We have 2 master classes. We'll have some games. We'll have some refreshments. I've created a workbook for this time so that we'll go through some different areas about falling in love with ourselves. We'll talk about rejection, and then we'll talk about forgiveness. We have a panel discussion, some small groups. So I'm telling you, you do not want to miss it. You really want to go ahead and register for that event. And I will put the link for that in the comments so that here on YouTube, you can register for that. And on Facebook, I'll put it in the comments as well, so you can register for this time together. It is a $50 registration fee. And we also have a few scholarships, some full scholarships and some $25 scholarships that will go towards the registration fee. All right. Well, I had an awesome time tonight and over these last 3 weeks sharing with you all regarding boundaries. I pray that your life has been changed as a result of this information. Share the video, like it, give me a thumbs up here on YouTube, and go ahead and share it and like it on Facebook. All right. You guys have an amazing evening, and we will see you again next week for Self-Care Sunday. God bless.